Hello and welcome to Recyclist. Once again, I'm your host, Eric Provost, and once again, I am being joined by a very special guest who is coming back to the show once again. Please help me welcome back to Recyclist the Senior Director of Public Policy and Communications for the Solid Waste Association of North America, Kristyn Oldendorf. Thanks for hanging out again.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Really happy to be here. Always like listening to your show and even more exciting to be on it.
Awesome. Again, I welcome you back to the show. You were on once before with a mutual friend of ours, Amy Lesterson Burke, the CEO of Swana. But today, we're flying solo with each other. We got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. Swana, I do the news roundups with Recyclist in addition to, having the opportunity to talk to a ton of amazing and interesting people within the industry. And it feels like I'm constantly talking about Swana in the news roundup. You guys have a lot of stuff going on constantly, but I imagine there's not too many people out there, too many listeners of Recyclist who would be unfamiliar with your organization at that point. But for those who, for whatever reason, may not be up to date, what is SWANA? What is the Solid Waste Association of North America?
Yeah, so SWANA is a nonprofit membership association for individuals in the waste and resource management sector. So I like to say, really anyone can be a member if you're interested in this industry. Please join us. So we have a wide range of membership: public sector, private sector. We have student members, researchers, nonprofits, and it's all parts of the industry from collection, communications and outreach, landfills, MRFs, transfer stations. So we really serve to bring together all those parts of the industry, all the, from public to private sector. And we provide a lot of resources to our members through our trainings and certifications. We provide advocacy, which is what I do, a lot of getting out, important information about industry updates or new regulations through our member communications. We do a lot of ways to connect members, networking opportunities. Just earlier today, we had a meeting of our battery work group, which hopefully we can talk more about. And we have different safety meetings. So that's a really good opportunities for members to connect with one another, share best practices, talk through problems. And of course, we host our annual conference, Archon, which will be taking place this September in St. Louis, which we can talk more about as well. So Swana does a lot. If you're interested in learning more, check out our website, reach out to us. We'd love to talk.
Yeah, you just touched on a safety workshop. Anybody listening to this episode, the week that it comes out, you guys are actually holding one as we're talking. You're holding one in just a few days, correct?
That's right. March 19th, Washington, D.C. This will be an in person safety workshop. So we'll have some guest speakers there, in addition to really some hands on facilitated activities. A lot of this will be in small group settings. So, really, the opportunity to dive in and connect with safety professionals from across North America to workshop problems and really dig into safety culture and safety leadership. So, this is meant to be really long lasting change, not just like here's this one task you can do differently, but how do you actually implement change and culture within your organization to have a safer workplace. So that's the goal of the workshop. And if you're listening before the 19th, it's not too late. You can register up and including the day of. So yeah, hopefully you all can join us in DC for this workshop.
Yeah, if you're listening to this episode the day or the week it comes out, go ahead and register for that. Obviously, safety is going to be a big talking point with Swana this year. Long-term fans of Recyclist will know the last person I had the opportunity to speak with was a Mr. K. Scott Griffith, and specifically about his new collaboration, about his new program, the Collaborative Just Culture program that you are working on with him. Unfortunately, the industry that we find ourselves in has, for a while, been one of the more dangerous in the country. But that is specifically why you guys are targeting safety and trying to enact this long-lasting change, trying to get out there and save a lot of lives. If you haven't checked out that conversation with Mr. Griffith, I highly recommend checking that out. A lot of the stuff that I'm sure Swana is going to be talking about at the safety workshop, and a lot of the stuff that they're going to be getting into throughout the course of the year when it comes to safety, is going to be in regards to that. So definitely check out that interview. But in regards to the safety workshop coming up this week. Are there any big hot button topics that people can expect?
hmm Yeah, that's right. And speaking of Scott, he actually will be at the workshop. He'll be presenting there, talking more about collaborative just culture. And for anyone who didn't listen to that interview, he actually comes from the airline industry. He was chief safety officer at a major airline for many years and really turned things around with safety in the aviation industry. So now bringing a lot of those best practices and insights to us. So we are looking forward to having him at that workshop. So, in addition to Scott, we'll be digging into kind of workshopping different solutions at the safety workshop. Um, WM is actually one of the workshop sponsors, and Fire Rover is the sponsor. So, we'll have a representative from WM talking a bit about their safety programs and the structure with such a big company. You can imagine how complex that can be. So they'll be talking us through just somehow of their best practices and how that's set up. So that'll be really informative. We'll be sharing a lot of SWANA's safety work as well. And we'll also be talking a little bit about that safety data that you mentioned that, shows some of the issues, safety issues within our industry. And then within that kind of workshop setting, we'll have facilitated discussions, and that will really be looking at some root cause analysis. So we're actually going to be looking at real life examples of safety issues that have happened, accidents, and talk through what can we do differently. What was the actual root cause? Something called the 5 whys case study, to dig into, why, keep asking the question to really drill down to the root of the problem. And then from that, take it out step by step into what solutions can be implemented within an organization to prevent something like that from happening again. And the goal here is really at the end of the day to develop an action plan so you can actually implement a new safety practice or a behavior based initiative within your organization. We'll also be looking at, just different safety policies and any barriers. Like everyone knows they should wear PPE, but maybe it's not always happening. So why is that? Or, you might have safety protocols for backing up. The policy's there, they know what they need to do, or even, something like riding step safety on the back of a truck. But sometimes it's just not happening. So identifying some of those barriers to why aren't safety policies being implemented or adapted widely, and thinking about how do you turn a policy into actual practice, right? It's one thing to have a policy on the books, but if you're not practicing it every day, it has limited effectiveness. So we'll be digging into some of that and thinking about, kind of beyond compliance into that voluntary cultural role of safety.
Yeah, and I had the opportunity to talk with Scott about a lot of what you were just touching on about people taking shortcuts and why policies, why the SOPs that are in place aren't being followed. I am curious. You touched on his work in the aviation industry, which is fantastic. One of the numbers that still boggles my mind is his program that was enacted in the aviation industry was specifically cited as a 95% reduction in fatalities. I would love to see those kind of numbers come to our industry. But how did you guys kind of get linked up? How did Scott kind of jump from the plane into the back of a garbage truck? How did we get that marriage to happen?
Yeah, I think we wouldn't promote that exact action because it does sound a little unsafe if you jumped into the bath. But yes, he back in fall of 2024, we were looking for a speaker at Swanas conference to talk about safety. And we were thinking, how can we learn from other industries? We're not the only industry, that has safety issues. So maybe let's look at some industries that have made some progress. So that's kind of where we came up with it. We, kind of came across Scott and his book and some of the speaking he's done. And in that first conversation with him, we felt like, pretty aligned with what we're thinking around that safety culture and leadership. Frontline training is obviously essential, very key, very important. But if that frontline training is not paired with really having that culture and that leadership, um, it's limited. So within SWANA, many of our members are in those leadership roles. They're overseeing safety programs, overseeing facilities. So we want to provide those resources to our members so that they can support their teams with day-to-day safety as well. So yeah, Scott's presented, was a keynote speaker for SWANA at our conference on safety. And then we continued to work with him as he's developed this collaborative just culture program and training. He spoke at Archon again this past fall. He's been on some webinars for us. So really just trying to get those safety resources out there. And it's been really informative, speaking with him and hearing from his years of safety experience.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see that program find the level of success that he had in the aviation program. Um, I know that that's going to be a big focus for you guys. Again, even following on from the safety conference this week. But in terms of partnerships and expanding and doing things bigger, it feels like Archon was kind of just the start. We loved Archon. Obviously, we were there together, and I got the opportunity to talk to a lot of great people and link in with a lot of really interesting minds that I've had the opportunity to speak with since then. And you guys are kind of taking the same approach. You just announced several new partnerships, and there's a lot of new programs and a lot of new initiatives that you guys have officially said that are coming down the pipeline. And I want to jump into a couple of these specifically because I think they're interesting. This isn't a new partnership or collaboration specifically, but you guys, I guess, have renewed your commitment, renewed your partnership with the Environmental Research and Education Foundation recently, correct?
Yes, that's right. So we did have an older kind of MOU with them, but hadn't been updated in a while. So over the last several months, we've had a lot of conversations with how we can collaborate more closely together. So EREF does a lot of research and really works a lot with universities to do in-depth research, on different topics throughout the industry. And so they have a lot of great resources available. So we're thinking about, how can we collaborate and share one another's findings, resources, and so on. So that new MOU was just signed a few weeks ago now. So we're excited about that. They are currently doing some work to dig into fatality data, actually, to look at some of the actual details of the causes of fatalities and the accidents. Um, that is work they've been doing with NWRA, and it'll be interesting to see the results of some of that study, because that'll really help us target our safety data. And I'll mention with that MOU, EREF, they put out information that can be helpful to anybody, anyone within the industry on a whole range of topics. Previously, their board is mostly private sector and researchers, that the kind of academics and universities who are doing a lot of that research. And they didn't have a public sector representative. So for SWANA, we represent so much of the public sector. And we were talking about, wouldn't it be great to have that public sector perspective as they're putting together their research topics and framing that research. So as part of this MOU, we'll actually have that opportunity. SWANA will be able to recommend to EREF some public sector organizations that could potentially be on the research council, and then from those recommendations, EREF will pick a public sector representative. So that would be on the research council, which helps select the different topics for researching. So we're excited about that. I think it's important to have that well-rounded perspective of the public sector as well in that research. And then, of course, as part of this MOU, we'll have opportunities to present at one another's events. At Archon this past fall, EREF did do a really nice presentation all about their different resources and reports that are available. And we'll be discussing opportunities for Archon this year for what EREF can present on. So just a lot of opportunities there to collaborate, share resources, kind of share like what do we each have for upcoming topics, see if there's any areas there that maybe we can share our findings. So yeah, lots of good potential there. I think everyone benefits from being able to coordinate and have that sort of reciprocal knowledge exchange.
Yeah, I know that specifically when it comes to just sharing resources and sharing, contacts and networking, that in and of itself can be very valuable. But when you guys signed the new memorandum of understanding, um, I mean, you guys flew out to California to do it. I assume that alone would have been enough for me to go sign something. But was there a specific goal in mind? Was there something, with this new renewed partnership? This is what we really want to achieve. with this continued collaboration with you guys?
Yeah, great question. We did time it well during the Global Waste Management Symposium, which
Yep.
BREF kind of forms the agenda for. That takes place every other year. So we timed the MOU signing well to do that at that symposium. So yeah, I think our overall goal really to advance research, education, awareness raising within the sector, and I think for SWANA, getting some of our ultimate goal as well was to get that public sector representation there. So happy we are able to do that by having a representative on the research council. So we've collaborated over the years, so that piece isn't really new, but I think just having a more um, standardized approach to how we collaborate and making sure that we're having that public sector representation and thinking about how we can really work together on our different shared priorities.
Well, there's another partnership in addition to ERAF. You guys are now partnered with PSI, the Product Stewardship Institute, and I definitely wanted to touch on that because I kind of recently was taught quite a few things about product stewardship by Heidi Sanborn, who I had the opportunity to actually record an episode of Recyclist at Archon, and I learned quite a bit in terms of the policy behind it and a lot of the ideas and what it takes to actually get a lot of this change enacted. And I thought that was really interesting that you guys are now directly partnered with the Product Stewardship Institute. I assume that is going to allow SWANA to take a more active role in helping shape kind of policy with the resource, the communication, the network. Was that the idea behind linking in with them so that you could have a more active role when it comes to domestic policy? Or was there something else that you guys want to focus on?
Yeah, so right now, SWANA has supported some battery stewardship legislation and electronics, mostly because of the huge issue of fires being created by lithium ion batteries being improperly disposed of, right? So that's
Yeah, I know
really
that's
what
specifically a
we're most.
massive problem going on right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could talk for hours just about that, but we are looking at stewardship, particularly where it relates to safety. So, batteries are kind of high on that list, but other products as well. So this MOU with PSI, it's not necessarily that we're working together on the advocacy piece, but a little more of that knowledge sharing, so that if there are opportunities to maybe support something or engage, we're both kind of set up to do that. So part of that is kind of participation on one of those work groups. PSI has different work groups on, like, there's a vape one, there's a mattress one. So looking at solutions for different kind of difficult to handle or dangerous products. So yeah, it's been helpful for SWANA to be part of those conversations and be in those groups. And then also things like, again, presenting at one another's events, maybe hosting some webinars together on topics of mutual interest. PSI has done a lot of work on vapes, and that vapes are kind of have their own particular challenges. So being able to collaborate on initiatives like that, some of that knowledge sharing and thought leadership. A representative from PSI did present at Archon, that did focus on vapes actually. So just thinking about how we can do more to present at each other's events. And I actually attended their event last June and talked about battery safety, um, in addition to some other topics. So yeah, it's really kind of a formalized framework for just strengthening our collaboration and some of that knowledge sharing. Um, and you mentioned Heidi Sanborn. Heidi is a really active supporter and member of SWANA, and she is with the National Stewardship Action Council, NSAC. And I don't want to spoil anything, but we are talking to them right now about getting together an MOU there as well, where we can
Oh, nice.
or to collaborate closely on knowledge sharing, again maybe some joint programming, education opportunities. So that'll be really nice as well. And NSAC actually had their board meeting co-located at Archon. So that was really nice to be able to have them there. So yeah, they've been great supporters. Heidi's been very helpful with advancing a lot of SWANA's technical policies and a lot of our other work. So always good to work with them as well.
Yeah, and I know you to very briefly touched on the battery program, even outside of the new MOU with PSI, with the Product Stewardship Institute. You guys are kind of spearheading your own. Uh, I don't know what to call it really. Some landfill battery awareness program, or is there a specific name for it?
So we have a few things going on with batteries. Yeah. So we have a battery work group for SWANA members. We've had that established, first set up in 2024. And as I mentioned, they actually met earlier today. So that work group is really working to compile resources and create new resources. And they're looking holistically at the issue of batteries. So it's not one thing. We know that there's no silver bullet. So within that work group, we have three sub work groups. So one of them is looking at that policy side. So are there things like battery EPR or ways to strengthen collection of electronics that may have batteries? Different policies that can really prevent batteries from getting where they shouldn't go. So that's the policy sub work group. And then there's a sub work group on communication and outreach. So that's really educating the public about how to properly handle these batteries, what to do with them. So they're really looking at some of those best practices. A lot of our members have really robust campaigns already that are in place. I keep mentioning Archon, but at Archon, we actually had a tractor trailer that had a wrap around lithium ion battery safety. That was LICSWAMA, the Lancaster County Solid Waste Management Authority. So highlighting things like that, campaigns that are in existence and how they're doing. And that group put together recently the kind of like a postcard template. So very easy to just add your own logo and website and download and push out to your residents or customers. And then the third sub work group is focused on facility and vehicle safety. So, despite our best efforts, batteries are going to get into our waste and recycling streams. That sub work group is looking at what are the best practices, policies, technologies to help on site and in vehicles to keep our workers and facilities safe. So they've done a lot around how do you engage your local fire department and emergency response. What are some best practices for that? What are some best practices for identifying batteries and what to do if you see them? So yeah, that group's been putting together a lot of resources.
Yeah, I know a lot of people think of double A's, triple A's, even D batteries as being big culprits, but obviously lithium ion batteries and the more prevalent that they've become in our electronics. And a lot of those are, fairly obvious cell phones and, remote controlled cars, children's toys, things like that. I'll say one of the most eye opening things that anybody that I've interviewed for Recyclist ever told me was the fact that apparently one of the biggest culprits of that is like little electronic greeting cards, the little recording, like Happy Mother's Day, Mom, and that little battery in that little card potentially causing huge landfill fires. I thought that blew my mind. That's one of those things that I go back to occasionally as I really hope people are taking this seriously. I really hope that you know people are actually listening when we're talking about this stuff, because as small and as innocuous and as weird as some of this stuff is, it is causing real harm and it needs to be handled in a specific way.
Yeah, that's right, Eric. We hear that a lot. Like people are surprised even a small battery can start a fire. But if you think about it, if this is going to a recycling facility, think about how much paper, cardboard, flammable materials are in that environment. So even a small spark can create a really damaging fire. And it is often the things you don't think about, like so many like children's toys now have batteries in them. Really, if you think about anything that charges, that plugs in and charges. Someone gave me an electric wine opener. Like that's a battery in it. How else is it charging? So it's all these things that they're not necessarily labeled that hey, this is a battery. Be careful with how you dispose of it. But it probably does. So you have to be mindful of that. So actually, something we just rolled out recently is a new web page with Fire Rover in partnership with Fire Rover. And on this page, we have a way for people to upload incidents. So if they've had a fire at their facility, they are able to upload where did the fire happen, what was the cause of the fire, and share photos and videos. So that helps us share a lot of those examples. So actually, we had a member share with me last year. They had a vehicle, one of their collections trucks was burnt like down to the shell, essentially. And the culprit of this fire was an electric fly swatter. So things
Wow.
you see these pictures, it's just so visual. It kind of takes it to a next level. So that web page will be really helpful in collecting some of those examples. And those examples are really helpful when we're doing that outreach and communications and when we're doing that advocacy. Because people, if you're just talking about it, they just think, oh, maybe this doesn't really apply to me. But when you can share some of those real life examples, that makes a difference. So I would encourage everyone to check out that website. It also has a battery drop off lookup map on there. So you can put in your zip code and see locations near you where you can actually bring the batteries for proper collection.
Wonderful, wonderful. Um, and because you're not busy enough, clearly, I know that you guys are already deep into figuring out what Archon is going to look like this year at St. Louis. As you said, it's going to be taking place late September into early October here in 2026. You've already had the submission for proposals. As a matter of fact, you guys just had a nice little sale on tickets. So, how is Archon shaping up in 2026? We think it can even be bigger than 2025?
Yeah, that's the hope, right? So yeah, we're excited. We're actually going to St. Louis next week for a planning site visit. So that's where we'll get to see, potential locations for the tours, see the convention center. We were really fortunate in Columbus last year with Archon to be able to do like a behind the scenes tour of the convention center, see their sustainability efforts at work. So yeah, so we're looking forward to this visit to St. Louis. I think we have a lot of good potential tour options. People always love getting out and seeing facilities firsthand, going to the landfill and that kind of thing. Um, yes, and call for proposals just closed yesterday, actually. So had some great submissions. We'll be starting to dig into those in the coming weeks, covering a whole range of topics. So yeah, it feels far away, but it'll be here before we know it. So planning is underway. And yes, you mentioned that discount. The early bird rate is in effect right now, so I encourage people to take advantage of it.
Yeah, again, if you're listening to this the week it comes out, go ahead and take advantage of that because as I mentioned a couple times already, had the opportunity to go to Archon. It was a fantastic, fantastic experience. I've already talked about being able to talk with Heidi Sanborn. I also recorded an episode of Recyclist with Elizabeth Rowe, who obviously you're very familiar with. How's Miss Rowe doing these days?
Yeah, Elizabeth Rowe is our current president of SWANA. She also comes from a communications background, so we love that. And yeah, really, again, we love hearing all of your interviews with a lot of these SWANA supporters and people who are really engaged. It's always interesting to hear the backstories and everything that they've experienced in their time during the industry.
Yeah, the stories are always the most fascinating part for me, and I'm really excited to check out Archon this year. But I want to make sure that anybody who's interested in checking out on anything that we've talked about so far has the opportunity to do that. Where can people? Where can people sign up for the safety workshop? Where can people find information from EREF? Where can people find information for the fire website you were talking about? Where can people get learnt up on all this stuff?
Yeah, thank you. You can find this all on our website, swana.org. We have a safety page where you can see many of these safety resources, including the safety training, the safety workshop, um, as well as the battery page. Um, and under the event section of our website, you can see the Archon 2026 page. So you can learn all about it there and sign up. And of course, anyone can feel free to reach out to me. We're always happy to talk.
Awesome. Well, Kristyn, I won't take up too much more of your time, but I really appreciate you coming on and talking about what Swana's outlook for 2026 looks like. I know there's a lot of really interesting things you guys probably have on the back burner that we can't even talk about yet. I'm really excited to see what happens with that. Once again, really excited to see the collaborative Just Culture program and how that gets adopted and expanded throughout the industry. But again, thank you for coming on and spending some more time with us and being yet another returning guest to Recyclist.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And I'll mention as well, Swan is really active on social media. We often post links to the Recyclist on there and other industry
Thank you for
news,
that.
Swana updates. So that's a great place too. You can follow us on most social media channels to see what's going on, direct links to resources and updates there as well. Um, Yeah, thanks for having us. Really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to all we have in store this year.
Wonderful. And for all of you out there listening to Recyclist, make sure once you give Swana some love that you check out Diamond Scientific. You can check them out online at diamondsci.com. That's diamondsci.com. You can also check out, you can also give them a call at 321-223-7500. They are an industry leader in gas analysis, instrumentation, and solutions. So if you need anything like that, make sure to check them out. Once again, Diamond Scientific, diamondside.com. Thank you for checking out this episode of Recyclist. Once again, I've been your host, Eric Provost. Thanks again to our guest, Kristyn Oldendorf of Swana. We will see you guys next time. Have a great week.